Hello, everyone. My name is Zaira, and I will be your facilitator for for performance management paper for the September 2020 attempt under the platform of online lecturer. I hope you all are doing good, and I hope you all are safe because this time is definitely difficult for all of us. So I personally believe that obviously this is not an easy time for everyone, but let's try to capitalize this quarantine time, and let's try to capitalize this idle time, this is spare time which we are having right now at our homes. So let me try to introduce first myself, right? Uh, I have done my ACCA back in 2007, and I have been associated in teaching profession for almost 9 to 10 years. And hello, everyone. My name is Ironies, and I will be your facilitator for the paper of performance management for September 2020 attempt, and under the platform of online lecturers. I hope you all are doing good. I hope you all are safe at your places, right? Obviously, this is a very hard time for all of us. So let's try to capitalize this quarantine as much as we can. Let's try. I mean, this can be a blessing in disguise that we are at home, right? So we can practice our lectures as much as possible, right? So this is basically what we can do. This is basically kind of stay positive kind of statement. So we have to keep ourselves calm. We have to keep ourselves motivated towards this paper. Although it's very difficult for us to concentrate on our studies because things are not good, but still we need to manage ourselves because that's how you manage yourself in a difficult time. That's basically a very important matter, right? Let me introduce myself a bit. I completed my ACCA back in 2007, and I have been associated with the teaching profession for more than 10 years. And I have taught so many badges of performance management, which was previously F5. And I personally believe that it's a very interesting paper. And if you like FMA or F2, this paper is going to be, a very interesting paper for you. And if you don't like F2, even still F5 is a very interesting paper because it has a lot of things. It will teach you a lot of things which are very important for your career, and which is very important for you to as a manager. Um, let me introduce performance management paper to you guys. If you are see you are in performance management, right? You are in the middle of ACCA, middle paper of ACCA, which is PM, because there is a link in ACCA. ACCA has actually classified perform management accounting or performance management or managerial accounting in three different stages. You are already done with F2. That means you have passed the first stage, right? Where you have learned a lot of techniques, different techniques regarding the basic clerical work. I mean, you have learned how to record material, you have learned how to record labor cost, you have learned what are overheads, what is direct cost, how to distribute overheads, what is the concept of planning, I mean, in the form of budgeting, how we control different things in the form of variances and performance management. So see, you have done a lot of things in F2, right? Now, what's in F5? Definitely, logically, there are certain F5 or performance management. There is a logical connection between F2 and F5, that there are a lot of different topics which are at a higher scale, at a higher level in F5. Like we have already discussed variances in F2, right? We will discuss its advanced version. We have already discussed performance management measurement in F2. We will discuss its advanced version. We have already learned few costing techniques, and we will learn its advanced version in F5 or PM. Then there are some new techniques as well, which we will learn in F5, and that will make a base for you, for all of you, to head towards advanced performance management, which is basically the P5 paper, right? So this is basically, this will give you a, a middle management role. I mean, somehow you can assume that that there was someone who was hired at a very initial phase. That was he has been hired as a clerical work for the clerical work, and he got promoted to the managerial post. So now what is his responsibilities? His responsibilities are to take decisions in certain scenarios. His responsibilities are to analyze different situation, performance of different situation in the sense of controllability, and to plan certain activities in the form of budgets. So these are basically going to be his duties or responsibilities. Responsibilities is a better word. And after learning all those skills, you will get promoted to advanced performance management, where examiner will treat you like someone who is at a strategic level and who is there in a company to solve different major issues of company, right? So this paper, in this paper, your major role is to decide about a lot of things. You have to decide, you have to behave like a manager, right? So this is the first challenge. Why this is the first challenge? Because students are, they feel difficulty when they move from F2 to F5, because in F2 they haven't done the analysis part, the evaluation, the analysis part, recommendation part, advice part, and evaluate is not a word which you will see a lot in F5, but analysis is very important here in F5. Recommendation is important, advice is important. So these instructions you will find very frequently in F5 paper, and which are different from what you guys have already done in F2. In F2 you have mostly done with some clicking concept, like in MCQs you have clicked a lot of things, lot of answers, or you may have written some few numbers as your answer. But in F5 you have to do, you have to justify your answer. You have to, you have to convince examiner that whatever you are writing is actually correct and is actually appropriate, right? So that's basically the first challenge, which I believe is for F2 student. The second challenge is actually related to not as exactly the skills, but actually related to computer side. How you are going to attempt F5 paper. Because see, if this is your first uh, paper after F4, and if you're going to attempt your first paper after F4, then in the first time you are going to deal with Excel and Word while doing the paper, right? If you are from Pakistan, or if you are from any of these countries, people here, we usually have papers which ask a student to write on paper, right? We have examination paper pattern where you have to write something on answer on the script on the paper. But here you have to type, here you have to use Excel. So that can be a problematic part for you guys. That can be a challenge for F2 students who are not habitual of using their laptops or computers on a regular basis, right? So that these are two things which I believe which are actually the problem for students. The first one is to learn what is F5, is to learn what are the differences in F5 as compared with F2. Things are very, things are in depth. You have to analyze every situation. And the second one is IT part. That's something which is challenging. So let's start with the specialist cost and management accounting. These are the specialist accounting techniques which examiner will ask you. Um, these are 5 techniques which you will learn in F5, in paper F5, right? You already know what are the these 3 concepts you have already done in your F2 paper, but in F5 these concepts are are in depth in the sense that examiner will give you a situation, and examiner will ask you to analyze the situation or to, examiner will ask you to in-depth analysis. One good part is that this section will this part of costing method is examined in either MCQ or in MTQ, multiple choice questions or multiple task questions, right? Constructive response question will not be this part, will not be examinable from this part. Now what do I mean by this? I will tell you later. So accounting activity based costing is here, right? This is in depth in the sense that examiner will ask you to actually calculate cost per unit of the product, which is not the part of F2. There will be, examiner will ask you for some advantages and disadvantages, or whether this is relevant for in a situation, in the given situation, or for a specific company or not. Examiner will give you a situation in that. In F2, this was something which in which examiner actually asked about theory, and mostly it was it's for kind of rote learning kind of theory, because since there were no calculation involved in F5, sorry, F2, examiner cannot ask for a lot of scenario based question kind of thing. But in F5, examiner will ask you scenario based question. Same case with target costing and same case with life cycle costing. All these things are in much depth in F5 as or PM as compared with the traditional as compared with F2. Throughput costing and environmental management accounting, these two are the new areas which you will learn, which you will study in F5, which has not been done in your previous paper, right? So this is the first section. Second section is of decision making. Those who are from FIA background may have an idea what this decision making concept is. Relevant cost analysis is a part of F5 PM paper or F5 paper. Cost volume profit analysis, CVP analysis, we have already done with single product CVP analysis. Here we have single product plus multiple product, both. That if a company is manufacturing multiple products, then how it can identify its break-even point or margin of safety or targeted profit, and how it can how it can prepare its break-even chart and profit volume chart kind of things. But fortunately, since you are going to attempt your CB paper, so you examiner will not ask you to plot the graphs, but examiner will ask question in such a manner that you should have a knowledge of how to plot the graph, right? That's important. We have already done with limiting factors in previous studies in paper 4, or MA2. In this case, we will deal with the single limiting factor, and along with that, we can have a multiple limiting factor case. And in case we have multiple limiting factor case, in that case, we will follow linear programming. All right. So this is basically a new idea, new concept for all of you. It's a very good topic because it will deal with shadow price and everything. Then there are pricing decisions. Sometimes you have to take some pricing decisions. This is we know cost plus pricing is there. We know profit markup, profit margin, but there are some different concept here as well. If any of you have done economics before, so we know that there is a concept of marginal revenues equals to marginal cost, and whenever company achieve that situation, that stage, that is basically the point where company can maximize its profit. So that part is actually can be examined here. Then there is a make or buy and other short-term decision making. This is also along with the limiting factor case, right? And short-term decision making, you may examiner may ask you some MCQs. Examiner may ask some few questions about any kind of decision making, whether to shut down a particular division, whether to continue with a particular division, whether to continue with a product kind of decision. Then dealing with risk and uncertainty, this is a completely new part in F5. We haven't seen this part in F2 paper, right? So this is basically decision making technique, and it's mostly a number crunching part. There are not much theory involved in this part. In costing techniques, there was theory, but in decision making, theory part is usually theory provision for examiner to ask theory is usually low in this particular section. Then budgetary system is important, and in this case, see, examiner will not ask you to prepare production budget and sales budget and consumption budget. These things are not required usually at F5 at F5 level. Examiner is mostly concerned with the theoretical part of budgets, right? Or a may examiner may ask you to prepare some rolling budgets because that was not the part of F2, but it's mostly related to the theoretical part, right? Quantitative analysis and budgeting, this examiner may ask you as a knowledge brought forward, but chances are quite low that examiner will ask you to apply time series analysis kind of thing. But maybe about 2 to 3 mark examiner may ask as a knowledge brought forward, but not as a complete solo topic. Then standard costing and variances. So we have already done with variances, right? But what's new here? See, we have already done with the basic part of variance analysis, where we have seen material price variance, usage variance, labor rate variance, efficiency variance, fixed overhead, variable overhead, sales variance, right? We have seen a lot of variances, right? We have prepared a reconciliation statement where examiner asked us to reconcile budgeted and actual profit, and there were some theories involved here there in F2. What's different in F5? See, there are some advances in F5, in the sense that if company is using more than one raw material in the manufacturing of the product, what we will do, right? That is examined in mix and yield variance. Or if companies selling multiple products, then what will be the impact on sales? And then there is a theoretical part, that how we are that examiner will give you a situation, and examiner will ask you to analyze the performance of company, and you are supposed to you are supposed to evaluate the performance, and in that case you have to see all those variants and to actually write what has been done in the company, right? In F2, theory part was very general, right? For example, examiner has given you certain situation that look, material price variance is adverse and material usage variance is favorable. So these are certain things. These are few reasons. Identify which reason could have contributed toward the variance, right? So that is already we have done in FMA in the previous paper, but now you are supposed to calculate few variances and you have to comment on those variances. If you are lucky enough, so examiner will ask you to calculate variances in the first part, and examiner will ask you to comment, and in the second part examiner will give you variances from his own side and ask you to analyze those variances. Otherwise, usually it's a connected part. Part A, you are supposed to calculate variances, and in part B, you are supposed to analyze the situation. So it's a very common thing, and there are likely chances that examiner will ask this topic in the constructive response question part, right? Then there is the most important topic of performance management, which is basically the performance management, that is actually performance measurement, right? Performance measurement or performance measurement mainly. See, performance measurement is a core concept of this PM, and I personally believe that if you don't know how to analyze the situation, if you are really weak at this area, you may have to attempt PM again, because the complete because see, advanced performance management, which is the next paper, that's optional, right? So if someone doesn't know how to measure the performance in a particular organization, examiner cannot ask you it again unless and until you attempt APM. So examiner really is very concerned with this part, right? So what is this? We have already discussed few things in the past, but now we have done ratio analysis, right? We are done with balance scorecard in our F2 paper. In F5 paper, along with balance scorecard, there is another concept which is called building block model that we will see in F5 paper or PM paper. Along with that, there has been a lot of focus which has been made on non-financial performance indicator, because we believe that non-financial performance indicator will give you a long-term idea about the perform how company will perform in future, as compared with a financial perspective, which actually is more concerned about what happened in the past, and that will give you limited knowledge that what's going to happen in future, right? Along with that, we have already discussed responsibility centers, right? So that is again the part of performance management or F5. But along with that, there is another concept which is called target. Sorry, there's another concept which is called transfer pricing. That is a completely new thing for all of you. You haven't done this before. So transfer pricing is another concept which will deal in F5 paper, right? Along with that, performance measurement in not-for-profit making organization, that is very important. That's a new thing for you guys, because you have already done this in F2, but now it's in depth. And then there's another chapter which is a bit new, that is performance management system and sources of management information. This is a new topic for you, and we will see this topic when we will do performance management. Because see, now what is this means that along with all these information, I mean, we are saying that, you see, customer satisfaction is important, see, customer retention is important, and there are a lot of things which are important, but it's equally important for you to have data relating to all these things. You should be able to retrieve that data, because see, if I'm saying that, look, customer satisfaction is important, and if we don't have enough IT support to actually analyze whether customers were satisfied or not during a period, then probably we know that this is important, but we are unable to measure that because we don't have that IT expertise with us, right? So we have to analyze that part as well, that what kind of information is required, what kind of systems we need for all these things. So this is very important. Now, what's next? This is the paper pattern. uh, we all know how to attempt MCQs, because this is something which we have already done in our F2 paper or FMA paper. We know how to attempt MTQs. This is already done in F2 paper. I mean, 3 MCQs, 10 marks each, means 2 marks per MCQ or per MTQ. So that means what? That means you will have 5 different requirements for in each MTQ. So that will end up in 10 marks, and ultimately you can secure 30 marks from that. The main problem is this part. Students usually are concerned with the third part, part C. Why? Because part C actually require you to write things. I mean, this is something where examiner will ask you to go for analysis part, and for analysis part you will be given a word extract of word, and you have to type actually. First challenge. Second one is that if examiner want you to calculate something, examiner will give you an extraction of a spreadsheet, and you are supposed to use that spreadsheet in order to calculate those things. So that's basically a challenge for students. One. The another challenge is that initially, when there was when examiner has not introduced this constructive response question or MCQs and MTQs, F5 paper was very simple in the earlier part. I mean, examiner asked 5 questions, and each question was of 20 marks, so that ultimately lead to 100 marks, right? Why I'm saying that that was simple, because in that scenario, examiner there are less chances that examiner could have covered the whole syllabus. But now things are more decentralized kind of thing. There are a lot of there's lot ample room for the examiner to examine complete syllabus in the sense that if something he cannot examine in part C, he can examine in part B. Something if he couldn't examine in part B, he can examine in part A, right? So MCQs and MTQs, both MCQs, 15 MCQs and then 10 MTQs and then question will give enough room to the examiner to analyze to examine to examine complete syllabus. That means what? That means you have to cover complete syllabus if you are going if you are preparing for your PM paper. Because if you are left with some part, and so and if you are unlucky, that and if it comes to your paper, you might be end up losing 10 marks or maybe 4 or 6 marks for that. So it's very important for every student to cover complete entire syllabus. Don't leave any topic. This is the most important part, right? And in case you have any issue, try to you have to manage time in that particular sense, right? So if you are saying that okay fine, I got out of time and I'm unable to prepare 10% further, I mean last 10% of the syllabus I'm unable to cover, then my advice is cover 90% at least. Try to cover 90%, 100%. I mean, try to cover 90% as much as you can. Then you can take risk of leaving 10% syllabus. But if you are not sure about 90%, you must consider 100%, right? So your first you should try to cover 100% syllabus. That is the most important part, right? Acha. Now, what's new here? One more thing. Sorry. Uh, One more thing is um, mostly the section A, the costing section of ABC, learning ABC and life cycle and target costing and EMA and throughput. Those 5 topics are usually part of either section A or section B of your examination paper. ABC, life cycle, target costing, throughput costing, EMA will not be examined in part C in the C section of this paper. But all other papers, all other topics can be part of section A or section B or section C. I mean, if examiner is asking variance analysis, then examiner may ask variance analysis in section C, in section B, or in section A, or in section A and C both, or in section A or B both, right? So apart from this costing method, all other topics are really very important because examiner can ask in any section, right? So that's important. Now, balance between the question, this is very important because sometimes the students think that this is a calculation based paper, which is extremely not the case. I personally believe this is a 60-40 ratio. 60-40 ratio in the sense 60 is theory and 40% is calculation, right? And if I ask you about knowledge or analysis, then it's 30 and 70. 30% your knowledge and 70% is the application of knowledge. Application of knowledge in the sense that we know what are the advantages and disadvantages of ABC. We know what are the prerequisites of ABC. I mean, when a company should apply ABC, but examiner will give you a situation and examiner will ask you to apply that on that situation actually, so that examiner can have an idea whether you are capable enough to become a manager or not. Similarly, you are capable enough of passing PM paper or not, right? And then examination during is simple, 3 hours and 15 minutes, where 15 minutes are the reading and planning time, where you have to read and plan your paper. We will discuss this 15 minutes later. But if someone asks me to give an idea about what to do in 15 minutes paper, I will ask I will ask him to go for some analysis part. I mean, try to read some question, right? Try to read a question and try to note few things. Try to make some annotation in that. If you can do that, or try to note some important points if you can do that, so that you will not be in a position, you will not waste your 15 minutes, right? So that's very important. Now, all right. This is a very important link because in F2 students usually don't connect themselves with ACCA website, and they are not used to of visiting ACCA website. But from now and onwards, I urge you all to do go to ACCA website, try to read examiner articles as much as possible, try to explore what links are given to you, what kind of facilities examiner has given to you, because this is a very important paper and the mode is very different for all of you. So you have to uh, put yourself in a compatible manner, so that you can try to attempt as much as possible. You can try to secure as much marks as possible. So let me try if I can visit this link. uh oops. Yeah. Okay, fine. So this is basically a ACCA page, and in this page you can see that the first one is guidance to sessions exam paper. Enable. I mean, these are some do's and don'ts with your paper. Then in the resources section, examiner has given you full specimen exam, right? For example, if you are done with your syllabus, if you are done with your practice material, then you can go and click on this website. So click on this part, so that you will be given a complete 3 hours and 15 minutes time to attempt a particular paper under computer based examination scenario, right? The next part is extra constructed response questions. In order to facilitate all of you, ACCA has constructed some other questions. I mean, ACCA took some other questions from past paper and then transformed it into CB style paper and given you all these things. Let me try to connect it if possible. Um, we have to wait a bit because it usually take 5 to 10 seconds in order to start with all these things. So examiner is actually will give you a basic idea that how your paper will look like in F5 attempt. So till then it's opening, let me introduce to other parts, right? This extra constructed response workplace. Now this is basically, suppose you are doing your questions and you want to practice your question in an Excel sheet, right? So if you open your Excel sheet, your MS Excel sheet, then what will happen? There are a lot of different features. There are a lot of features which are actually available in Excel will not be available to you in your paper, right? So if you really want to, let me check if, yeah, it's done. See, this is do's and don'ts. These are the requirement. These are the do's, and you just have to go with all these do's and don'ts of your paper. You guys are familiar with all these things since you have done F2 paper previously. So examiner will give you time to read all these instructions, right? But still, it's better to read these instructions at your home before going to the paper, right? So this is examiner summary, right? This is a specimen exam is not timed. You will be presented two constructed response question. So examination pressure is not there. So let's start with this. Let's see what we can say. Okay, yes. If you are ready to begin your exam, please click yes. Okay, fine. Now this is basically how examiner can give you a question. For example, this is basically a scenario, right? and these are three requirements, and you are supposed to do all these three requirements. First requirement, calculate each of the six possible profit outcomes, so you have to calculate it. And the second part, you have to calculate it. The third part is actually related to explanation of maximax and maximum rule. So I think examiner should give you some word file here, but it's not given. Maybe it's in the next section. No, it's not here. Usually examiner give you a section where you can write all these things. So you can write your C part here, you can write your D part here. So that's basically how you can do this, right? Then extra constructed response workplace. This is basically another part where examiner will give you some extra spaces to cover your to attempt your question, right? Meanwhile, it's opening. Let me introduce you to the other parts. Introduction to CBE session, just an introduction from ABCA. Sorry, from ACCA, and then Microsoft skills for sessions for CBE. Right? If this is another tool which is given, let me try to check. Yeah, it's done. So this is what. Um, okay. Okay. So, examiner has not given you any question here, right? All what you have to do, you have to read your question, right? For example, you have some hard copy with you, and you can start writing your answer. That, for example, the advantages of ABC. So you can practice your sorry, and you just put a heading, right? And then you can start with the first point, with the second point, with the third point, and so on. So this is basically how you can do. Some basic features are available, for example, right alignment, middle alignment, left alignment, middle alignment, right alignment, and then justify. Then if you want to put some bullet points, you may. If you want to number, you may. So these are few basic things. Table you can manufacture here. You can construct a table here. If you don't want to examiner to read something, you can strike that something, strike that thing. So this is basically what you need to explore. I'm not going to teach you right now here, but this is something which you can experience, right? Then what's else? I think you can navigate. Let me try to yeah, there are around 13 word processing spaces are given here, but you cannot save these workplaces, right? Keep this thing in your mind. You cannot save. All what you can do, you can try to take a snapshot of this part so that you can save it for later phase. Then there are some spreadsheet spaces also given here. For example, I hope it's yeah. So see, not all features are given here. Some basic features are given here. For example, bold, italic, underline, and to change the color and all these things. So you need to practice here. You need to practice it a bit here because it's really very important. For example, is equals to 45 plus 95, and you got the answer. So this is basically how you can practice, how you can link, how you're going to link. You can practice it here because if you see the normal Excel is usually different, right? So this is basically the Microsoft Excel tool part, I guess. No. Oh, all right. So what else do we have? I mean, these are the basic requirements which are very important. Guidelines to CB session examination. You may click on this and just check what is there. So this is very important page which you must visit before going to the examiner. This is basically a very important page which you must visit while attempting your F5 during your F5 session so that you can practice as much as possible, right? So that's the end of this video, right? uh, I hope you got all these basic issues which are actually present in performance management paper. So have a nice day. Thank you. Allah Hafiz. Have a nice